Today we have something quite exciting as we're taking a look at the MSI RTX 5070 Ti Vanguard SoC, which is a completely new lineup for the RTX 50 series and something that, well, we've not had a chance to look at since its inception. As part of the Vanguard series, this card is one of MSI's more premium graphics cards, so you get more premium materials, a more outlandish, cooler design, a bigger heatsink, a huge dose of RGB lighting, and of course, faster speeds. Unfortunately, all of this does come at a cost, though it does give something for users wanting a high-tier MSI-based GPU without paying the somewhat unreachable price of the Supreme series, which sits above it. I'm all for paying more money for a graphics card though, as long as I'm getting more for my money. And, well, that's something we'll be taking a look at and putting to the test today. Now, we've already tested the 5070 Ti at launch when we looked at the MSI Ventus 3X model, so if you want to see how a stock 5070 Ti does in terms of the GPU core performance, then definitely go and check that out. And since then, we've also had models from both Inno3D and PMY. But this card, in theory, should be in the next echelon of performance, sporting a pretty hefty 150 MHz pre-factory overclock. And hopefully that large cooler helps in the thermal department too. But before we get into that, here's a quick word from this video sponsor.
Oi oi, I hear you're in the market for a proper top-of-the-line monitor. Best blacks, brightest whites, sharper than a tailor's crease, am I right?
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, look no further, my son. Feast your peepers on this, the Glare-Master 5000. A true marvel of technology. Just, maybe don't use it when the sun's out.
What? That's not what I want. I was after a 32-inch 4K 165Hz QD OLED with adaptive sync.
Cool, blimey, we've got a right tech connoisseur here. You don't mess about, do you? All right. I see where you're coming from. Forget the Glare-Master, that was just a warm-up. What you need, my friend, is the Aegon Pro AG326UD from AOC. Top-tier gear, 4K, 165Hz, QD OLED, all the bells and whistles. And get this, HDR 400 certified. That's the real deal, no mucking about.
That does sound good.
Of course it does. I wouldn't steer you wrong, would I? I'm all about quality, me. Now, if you want to get your hands on one of these beauties, you know what to do. To find out more, click the link in the description below. You won't regret it, my son. Lovely jubbly.
So the Vanguard series is meant to stand out from the crowd as a more premium and high-end GPU experience. And I think it's fair to say that on first impression, it certainly delivers on that. It's quite a, well, large graphics card, which certainly has its benefits, but keep in mind that its compatibility with smaller form factor builds will be limited. So measure twice before you order your new graphics card. As the Vanguard measures in 357mm long, 151mm tall, and 66mm thick, and occupies 2 physical slots in your case, but is actually bordering on a 3-slot card when you take the cooler into account. Now, MSI claim that they drew their inspiration from the mighty turbines of spacecraft. Well, who am I to argue with them? I mean, it does sound very markety and sales-like, but with a mixture of matte blacks, aluminium and carbon fibre accents, all of which appear to be edged with lashings of RGB lighting, it's at least ticking all the design boxes for something a bit quirky and somewhat sci-fi. Now, it's not all just flashy trim though. Well, okay, it's actually a lot of flashy trim. However, it's been designed with aerodynamics in mind. Those fins and scoops alongside the fans are designed to channel airflow in and around the card with greater efficiency, while the third fan in the middle is just adding more airflow and is located on the fattest part of the heatsink. Now, the card feels extremely sturdy and, if anything, a bit bulky, giving it a kind of weight of quality, which at 2,205 grams, it's definitely on the heavier side, though this does add to the durability aspect that you'd expect. This is more, it's a more expensive model, so feeling the weight of all those extra materials is at least reassuring that you're literally getting more product for your money. You also get a small included stand to help prop the card up, and while it's not the best solution with Synfa-heavy cards, as it does come across as, well, quite cheap, it's more than capable of doing what it's set out to do. And colour-wise is, I guess, pretty understated that it should function without being glaringly obvious inside your build. Though for the price, I think most consumers would actually be expecting something a bit better, maybe not made out of plastic too. Now, a lot of the Vanguard's weight comes from the enlarged heatsink with 3 105mm fans set into the thick shroud design, and comes equipped with their latest Stormforce fans with claw-textured blades and a circular arc edge, all designed to minimise noise and deliver higher airflow. And as they are the same fans used on the higher-end Supreme models, I've actually got pretty high hopes for this one. Surrounding the fans is a fairly substantial amount of RGB that acts like the card has a large kind of slash on it, along with the light up MSI RGB logo on the top of the shroud, with a few extra spots there too. And the MSI Dragon, of course, on the very end. Now, while some may not be a huge advocate of RGB, I think it's enough to not take away from the mixed materials of the shroud that give it that premium look, especially when coupled with the carbon fibre accents, which again come across as quite subtle, because carbon fibre is used or can be used in the wrong way and can definitely make a product look and feel cheap. But here, I think it actually works. Now, one area that may rub people up the wrong way is the 12-volt 2x6 power connector, as this does actually sit slightly recessed into the cooler. Though MSI do provide an adapter with a yellow connector, making it easy to see if the adapter is inserted correctly. As you see, if there's any yellow, well, it's just not in far enough. It's a pretty novel feature, but I guess simplicity goes a long way, and it definitely does the trick. There's also a BIOS switch to change between gaming mode and silent mode, which both feature the same 2588 MHz boost speed, with just a physical change happening to the fan curve. Though if you're craving more performance, you can actually increase that boost speed further to 2602 MHz through MSI Center. Or of course, you could just manually overclock it, which we will be looking at very shortly. The end of the card where that light up dragon is fully enclosed, wrapping around and actually meeting into the backplate. And no matter the orientation that you install it, you'll find the card fitting right in and looking premium while doing so, which I guess is the look that MSI are going for. On the back of the card, there's a reinforced metal backplate with some cutouts for airflow to pass through. And while the majority of the backplate is aluminium, there's also some more carbon fibre accents to just break up the design a little bit, along with some branding by the way of a Black Dragon and GeForce RTX logo and a white MSI logo on top of one of those carbon panels. Now, looking at the rear I/O, it's easy to see kind of just how big this heatsink really is, with the card sitting well above the 2-slot mounting plate and extending out much wider too. It comes with 3 display ports as well as a single HDMI port, so you can easily connect multiple high-performance monitors, easily accommodating multi-display gaming or a comprehensive productivity setup. Interestingly, there's virtually no heat exhaust here. That's not always a necessity, as sometimes enclosing a card can actually help to direct airflow in a kind of better way anyway. Now, taking the card apart was pretty easy, with the first step being the 9 screws holding the backplate on, of which 2 wrap around to the sides of the card, and a single thick heat pad is in place that sits behind the core. That comes down to the PCB not really having much going on with the rear side of it, so no pads are really needed there anyway. There's then another 12 screws attaching the cooler to the PCB, and it's here where, like most 50 series cards, that you get a sheer sense of the size of the cooler in comparison to the PCB, which definitely feels like they're, getting smaller, or maybe the coolers are getting bigger, or more than likely it's just both. Now, at the heart of the heatsink is a vapour chamber with 8 heat pipes passing through, which are flattened in some areas to help increase the surface area. The vapour chamber makes direct contact with the GPU core, while extra plates have been installed for the memory ICs on top, while other aluminium blocks are positioned around the large heatsink to make contact with the VRM circuitry, and again, make contact with the heat pipes to help dissipate heat. Now, one thing I will say is that after taking the card apart, it's clear that the heatsink makes up the bulk of the weight of the card. And that's also, again, a testament to the durability and quality of the card. And when you couple that in with the metal backing bracket of the fan shroud, everything feels really well engineered and like it should last the test of time. Now, despite all the cooling hardware, as mentioned, the PCB is still pretty compact, at just around 180mm long. But then again, all of the RTX 50 series cards have a surprisingly small footprint. The added benefit of this can be seen in the cooler design and the backplate, which have holes to allow a lot of airflow to pass directly through the cooler, greatly improving airflow and, of course, heat dissipation. Now, in terms of power, the Vanguard has 15 phases for the GPU core and a further 3 phases for the memory. All phases for both GPU and memory are MPS MP87993 Dr. MOS phases with a rating of 50 amps each, with the GPU core phases using a monolithic power systems MP29816 controller, while the memory uses a smaller MP2988 controller, again from monolithic power systems. Finally, MSI has included high-quality thermal pads which are thicker and have a higher heat transfer rate to help that big heatsink unlock even more performance, at least in theory, and well, that's what we're going to find out next. Now, when it comes to overclocking, we managed to gain an extra 380 MHz on the core clock speeds of the card, which is, well, pretty impressive, along with our memory being maxed out like we see on all NVIDIA cards. Now, something that helped us to achieve this level of overclock is the fact that we were able to increase the power limit of the card to 116%, which is more than typical for NVIDIA GPUs, especially at this tier. This result was consistent between both the performance mode and silent mode of the card as well, since those settings actually only affect the fan curve and not the clock speeds. Taking a quick look at GPU's edge shows us just how far this pushes things, with our base clock boosted from 2295 MHz up to 2588 MHz, which is rivaling our stock boost clock of 2675 MHz. But with the overclock applied, this boosted now all the way up to 2968 MHz. But obviously, you can expect to see this boost even higher in actual usage. Our memory frequency also saw a healthy improvement, going from 1750 MHz all the way up to 2125. To see how the card manages to hold up in an extended gaming test, we ran F124 on a loop for an hour on each mode, and then each mode overclocked to see how it manages in a more realistic scenario. And if you're counting, that adds up to 4 hours of testing in total. So keeping this brief, since we have a lot to go through, and starting with gaming mode at stock, we find that our stock results in gaming saw us, well, at pretty healthy temperatures, with both the core and memory averaging at around 57 degrees. In terms of clock speeds, we're also seeing about what we'd expect, with an average of around 2740 MHz, which is right around the boost clock for the card. Ensuring the card is running at these lower temperatures and running stably are the fans, which are around 1300 RPM on average, are running a little faster than I'd expect for a cooler this big, but even so, they're not really noticeable. Then the last thing to look at here is the power draw, and we see it running a surprisingly amount lower than the 300 watt TDP of the card, with an average of around 260. Then as we move over to silent mode, and here we actually see things running a slight bit cooler, with an average around 55 degrees on both the core and the memory. This becomes a little more confusing when we look at the fan speed and see it running quite a bit slower than the stock gaming mode test, with an average of around 1030 RPM. Things do start to make a bit more sense, however, when we look at the power draw, and we notice that we're running a little more power efficient, so there is less heat output overall. In terms of clock speeds, we didn't really see any difference since, as I mentioned before, the different modes focus more on the fan curves. So the only difference you could really expect from clock speeds would be down to thermal performance, which doesn't really prove to be a problem anyway. Moving on to the overclocks and starting with the gaming mode again, we can see that right off the bat, not a lot has changed with the temperature, only averaging 2 degrees higher than what we saw at stock, now at around 59 degrees throughout the test. This higher temperature is clearly reflected in the rest of the results too, with an average clock speed of around 3110 MHz, an increased power draw of up to 280 watts on average, and as a result of all of that, a higher fan speed, now sitting around 1400 RPM, but still not being what I'd class as noticeable. Then finally here is the overclock results for silent mode, and to the surprise of no one, we see the card running hotter here too, now even hotter than gaming mode when overclocked, with an average temperature of around 60 degrees, so not really too much in it anyway. Clock speeds are roughly the same as what we saw in gaming mode overclocked, with an average of around 3110 MHz, while the power draw also saw around the same average of 280 watts. But we did see a slightly higher spike here, which is worth noting. Now to wrap things up here, we do need to quickly talk about the fan speed, and with an average around 1075 RPM, it's clear to see why the average temperature is higher than before, as we've maintained a very similar fan speed to stock, but with, I guess, a slightly higher power draw and higher core clocks. Regardless of that though, the temperatures are still perfectly acceptable, and the fan speed barely noticeable, especially when compared to the rest of the fans in our system. Moving over to gaming performance and starting things off with a Plague Tale Requiem, where things are off to a pretty impressive start, with the Vanguard in both the gaming and silent mode managing to sit ahead of the MSI Ventus and the Inno 3D card, even if only by a few frames. Interestingly here, we see that even though both modes came in with identical average frame rates, silent mode fell 14% behind in the lows, which is a pretty noticeable difference. When it comes to our overclocks, as expected, performance does increase, but it's the scale of improvement that's pretty surprising, with a 7% uplift in silent mode and a 10% improvement in gaming mode. Now bringing the card with bin 4% of the RTX 5080, which sits much higher in the stack when looking at our stock results. Moving over to Black Myth Wukong, where we see things shift a little bit, with the Vanguard in both the gaming and silent mode match perfectly with the Inno 3D card, but with an extra frame in the lows. When we take a look at overclocking and take that into consideration, we can see that our performance has boosted pretty high again, with both cards falling just under the more expensive and more prominent RTX 5080 again. And this time we see them sitting just above the PMY card, with silent mode seeing a 4% improvement. In our last game, Cyberpunk, we found results sitting a lot closer together, and surprisingly here, we see silent mode at stock actually coming ahead of the gaming mode, albeit only by a single FPS in both the averages and the lows, so nothing too concerning, and within margin of error. When comparing to the other cards we tested, we can see some significant improvements over the Ventus card, which is also from MSI, but does admittedly come in at a much lower price. We also see the stock gaming mode result coming in with the same average frame rate as the Neo3D X3, but with an extra frame in the lows. Then onto overclocking, we can see that the card does see an improvement in both modes, but nowhere near as impressive of a boost as we saw in our other games, as we only see a few frames of improvement for each mode, meaning that we see a 2% or 1 FPS improvement from silent mode and a 6% or 3 FPS improvement from gaming mode. Now, this improvement is enough to make the Vanguard sit at the top of the stack of the other RTX 5070 Ti's, but it's not enough to give us any extra performance over any other cards, as we can see it still falling behind the likes of the RX 9070 XT, 7900 XTX, and the RTX 5080. Lastly, if we circle back around and take a closer look at the peak temperatures of our card and some other 5070 Ti's that we've tested, we can see that without much surprise, the Vanguard is the coolest running card in all of our tests. And since it has such a large and well-built cooler, well, this isn't exactly surprising. Taking a bit more of an in-depth look though, we can see that at stock, we see that silent mode actually saw a lower peak temperature in its core and memory than the gaming mode, which is the opposite of what you'd expect to see. But with it only being a 2-degree difference, we could call this margin of error anyway. Overclocking the card does cause them to switch places, and again, it's only a small difference between them of 2 degrees, which is nothing all that remarkable anyway. All in here though, it's safe to say that this cooler more than does the job and is very good at keeping things under control, so it does get some brownie points there. So a pretty extreme card in some senses, though I think and I'd like to think other consumers, would have maybe expected a bit more from the gaming side of things, especially given the, higher price tag. Another area that I guess you could call a gripe is the gaming and silent modes. Personally, I would have liked to have seen a change to the clock speed to warrant one more over the other. And instead, it just stems down to the fan speed, which didn't really make all that much difference to temperatures, while increasing the fan speed by around 370 RPMs or so. Now, if I was running this particular GPU, personally, and obviously everyone is different, I'd be inclined to run it in silent mode with a small overclock to bring performance up a bit without sacrificing on the noise. Not that any mode was particularly noisy in the first place. Beyond the gaming performance and the cooling, it is a lovely card, don't get me wrong, with a real focus on premium materials and solid durability, and that shows from the moment that you take the card out of the box, or even before that due to the size and weight of the overall package. It's heavy in the grand scheme of things, but that always lends itself to feeling solid and well built. And well, honestly, there's no getting away from that. And that leads you to believing that the extra cost has gone somewhere. And on this card, I firmly believe that it has. You're not just paying for some flashy RGB and a BIOS switch, but instead a vapor chamber cooler that, combined with other cooling features, leads to a solid card that has headroom while still remaining virtually silent. The big question, is it worth the extra cost over a different model like the Ventus? Well, that comes down to the individual, and it's the same argument as to why someone would buy a Supreme card, an ROG Astral, an Aorus Master, and so forth. There is a market there for them, and rightly so, depending on your use case and your needs. And well, what this card does is implements features that you'd expect on those super high-end models, but just for a cut-down fraction of the price. And you know what? I'm all for that. Having something between an MSRP or pre-factory overclock reference style card and then the high-end cards made primarily out of unobtainium, this just kind of slots in somewhere in the middle. If you're looking for an RTX 5070 Ti and have a little bit more to spend without going into RTX 5080 territory, then yes, this is one of the best built 5070 Ti's that we've tested. And you wouldn't be disappointed by owning one if you're able to stump up that little bit more money for one. But as with everything in this day and age, it does all come at a cost. So there you are. A look at the MSI RTX 5070 Ti Vanguard. Done. A new lineup of GPUs from MSI, which definitely have their place in the market as a somewhat sweet spot without going into the more extreme realms. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Would you look at picking one up if the price was within reach? For now, that's going to do it for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, a like and a sub to the channel would be amazing. And if you love what we do, we've got a Patreon where you can support what we do, also getting access to some really cool extras, including behind the scenes content, super special area on our Discord, meetups at the eTeknix offices, and much, much more. The link is, as always, down below. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.